Okay, we're cooking. So homework for today was to get your guy pathing back and forth between the 2 points based on colliders, right? If I remember correctly, right at the end of class last time, my dude was spawning at a weird place. I can't get the zombie baby out of the way. All right, so he's getting to the other one, but I thought we had him, well, what I want him to do is I want him to start kind of right around here, walk to this guy and use that as the bounce back. And we talked about how, like in some older games like Mario Brothers, they use that thing to kind of get the back and forth kind of started. So let's get my guy spawning at the right place. So we'll start him there. Let's go into my script here. Okay, we start off having move left set to false. So inside of update, it should go to move right. Or we'll go from end marker to start marker. But actually, the reason he's starting there is that's his starting position. So if we want him to lerp from his current position to the start position. So really this move right should be this dot transform dot position. So that should get him moving to the right based on that. And then moving to the left. Let's see what that ends up looking like. He'll just move to the right at the beginning here. Then let's slow him down. All right, so one thing we can see here is notice right at the very end, I mentioned this at the beginning of class last time or early on in class last time, notice how he slows down as he gets close to this sign. So that's part of the nature of lerp. You either accept that or there's some algorithms out there that talk about ways of kind of hacking lerp, where you feed it different inputs as you're getting closer and closer and adjust the speed so it looks like he's going at the same speed. We're going to just leave it. We're going to say it's good enough. So now we need to make sure we have box colliders on these guys. So we have the collision. So box collider 2D. Box collider 2D. All right, now we're going to need to, when this guy gets hit, he needs to programmatically let our dude here know that he needs to turn around. Well, we can go to a couple different routes. We can either have this guy notice that he's collided with this guy, and then this guy let this guy know that you need to turn around, which is going to effectively be flipping that Boolean variable, right? Similarly, we can have this guy let this guy on impact know that you bumped into me. So in either case, if we're going to handle these programmatically, we use a trigger, right? The box collider is a trigger. Now, the flip side is we already have a box collider on our player here. What we can do is we can go into the code for our player. And we already have this on collision enter. So our baby knows what to do when he collides with the floor. He knows what to do when he collides with an enemy and he's alive. Okay, so we want to kind of mess with this a little bit. We need to decide whether our enemies are all the same. So this was our code for dealing with our spikes over here on the left, right? So the baby collided with that enemy. Now, do we want the same thing to happen when the baby hits this guy? He's an enemy too, right? He should die. All right, so we're going to go ahead and let's flag this enemy as tagged enemy. Make sense? So right off the bat, let's just make sure that this still works. So we'll have the baby run up to this guy and baby dies with a mighty leap. So the baby was still, the ragdoll was still falling when this guy respawned, but that's okay. Okay, so now the baby reacts to that guy. But now we need to give some logic to our enemy here for what happens to our enemy, similarly to what happens to our baby. So when our enemy bumps into something, for instance, these signs, we might call those trigger points or bumpers, maybe call them bumpers. So let's go into our project, go to our scripts, and we're going to, we already have a script on our enemy. So this is what our enemy does. He moves left, he moves right. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to create tags for our bumpers. So we'll go to tag, we'll go to add tag. We'll call this guy a bumper. And we'll click on our markers again. They both need to be bumpers. So we'll make that guy a bumper. We'll make this guy a bumper. And then we'll go into the script for our enemy. We'll say on collision enter. Now this guy gets as a parameter the person he collided with. So we'll say if collision dot collider dot tag is equal to a bumper, then I want to invert my move left. All right, now one issue we might run into here is we might hit that bumper multiple times. Does that make sense? So we have to see how this guy reacts, whether he turns around and moves away from it quick enough where he doesn't actually hit it a second time. Now, on collision enter should only happen when he first enters it. So I believe this should actually work okay. So let's take a look. So now every single time the enemy enters any collider, he's going to ask the question, was this guy a bumper? If it was a bumper, invert my move left, which should then impact the next run through update and make me move the opposite direction. Okay, so it looks like he's trying to back off, but he's hitting it over and over again. I think we can prove that. We come into the script. And we just print here. We should see a whole bunch of prints. I don't see any prints. Does our enemy have a box collider? He does. And he has a rigid body. Oh, on collision enter 2D. Same error I keep making. We turn off the print here. I will actually test to see if it worked the first time. And this guy should be a collision 2D, not a collision. Ooh. All right. Well, he's doing it. Dodge that, right? So now he's moving so fast, he's actually passing through the baby without, well, look at that. He looks like he's in both places at the same time. Okay, so need to slow him down. Now, part of this behavior happens from this original lerp. So we changed this lerp at the beginning to lerp from wherever his current position is to his the end position, correct? Now, each time through, we're saying what fraction of the journey has he covered. Now, I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to just change fraction of journey to always be 0. See if this changes our behavior. Oh, no, it doesn't make him move at all. So distance covered should be time versus start time times speed. Let's give this guy a hard-coded value. We might have to go back and do the begin and end position. That's going to kind of break us for the initial one, but we can flip back and forth. All right, we should be able to shrink that speed down to give us something. I want to see if he continues to speed up in that case. He looks like he's a constant speed now, doesn't he? I don't feel like we're going to get to the point where he's bouncing back and forth. Let's do a 0, 0. Otherwise, what we need to do is either start him at one end, which is okay. That's not the end of the world. All right, so now he's moving a lot slower. Oh. So let's maybe do this at, let's do 0.9. kind of a weird behavior because of the lerp speed up and slow down at the extents. But he's bouncing back and forth between there. The alternative would be this. I use my end position and start position. Start marker dot position. And then I say fraction journey. Same thing true here. This is going to be this dot end marker dot position. Frac journey. You don't need it, but I do like using it. I just didn't. And then I'm going to actually start with move left being false. That way, at least he'll start off on the right-hand side and not start off behind the player, kind of ninjaing on him. Oh, we gotta slow him back down. Well, actually, that speed should have been fine. And it was after he bounced back and forth a couple times. Then he got. So let's speed him back up to 3. And that was the collider problem. He's hitting those colliders multiple times. And what's happening is when he inverts, he's bouncing to the other side. So this still isn't an accurate representation of what we want. So this is saying when he's moving left, he's going from the end marker to the start marker. But when he's moving right, he's going from the start marker to the end marker. So that immediately jumps him to the other end, which then has him enter the collider on that side, which then jumps him to the other end, which has him enter the collider on that side, so on and so forth. Okay, so he's bouncing back and forth between the colliders. So realistically speaking, in order to get this to look the way we want it to look using lerp, we decided last time we could not make lerp walk backwards, correct? I think that's what we... So he's moving left. He's going to go from end marker to start marker. He's moving right. Actually, aren't these are kind of backwards, right? He's moving left, his starting position. Oh, yeah. If he's moving left, his starting position will be the start marker. And he's heading towards, well, actually, hold on. Start marker is which guy? That's the end. This is the start. Okay. So that's correct. I just named him kind of funny. And it'll happen over that fraction of a journey. And this move right here is that it is trying to slow it, not have him slow down as much when he gets to the end. So we need to come up with a different way of having him switch directions, I guess. So when he's moving to the left, but that's, I want to see what I actually drag it into in the script. Okay. And that guy's the end marker. That guy's the start marker. So when we first start, we're going to move to the right. Yeah, otherwise he's not going to start at his current position. So we can use the start and end position if we're having him only path one direction. Otherwise, I do think we need to use his current position and where he's heading. This dot transform dot position, which then breaks this logic up here where we're no longer going to do the slowdown thing. So that's where we need to put in our fudge number. Both of those need to be floats. We probably need to have some sort of slowdown to keep him from having that I wonder if we remove the rigid body from, if we remove the rigid body, then he won't, he'll fall right through, I think. We have nothing for him to land on. Oh, the collider's not hitting. But what if we set it as a trigger then? So I'm going to make the enemies set up as a trigger. Then we'll go in here, and then instead of on collision enter, we'll say on trigger enter 2D. We'll put that same logic in there. Let's see if the trigger fires without the rigid body. Yeah, it doesn't. So he needs the rigid body. Can we give him some more mass to keep him from bouncing so hard off the ends? Oh, well, I gotta. No, he's not bouncing at all. Oh, I still need to have him. So the difference was auto mass. Isn't he still colliding with the ground? Or do we have freeze position on Y set on him? Yeah, so we never actually had him colliding with the ground. We froze his position on Y, which effectively kept him in the air. So why isn't he bouncing back and forth now?
Is the trigger?
Is the who?
The box collider is trigger.
Oh, thank you. That was from our previous experiment. All right, so let's see if we can turn on automass. Although I would think this would make it worse. We'll definitely know better. What if we set the mass to nothing, or as close to nothing as possible? No, still is bouncing off. That's the nature of LERP. That it speeds up at the beginning. Okay, so let's look at them. So let's call this a reasonable implementation of this. He is going back and forth between the two. He's just a little bit unpredictable on speed. So that slow down and speed up at the beginning is part of the behavior of LERP. So let's look at an alternative way of pulling this off using a translate. So what we're going to do here is for move left and move right, let's create new functions for these. Private void move left translate. Okay, and we already have a speed. So what we're going to do is we're going to say this dot transform dot translate, and this is going to go in. Is there a translate 2D or just a translate? Okay, so this is going to translate from its current position in a direction. We want to make him move left. So we're going to call this guy vector3 dot left times speed. And he's going to do that. And then let's do a move R translate. And this will move him to the right at a speed. All right, so now this is different than what we've done before. This is not adding a force. On each frame, we are actually saying from here to here. Now move from here to here. So we're moving him like a little chess piece along the way. But because it's happening one frame at a time, we're looking at like a flip book. We're seeing him, we should see him make what hopefully looks like a smooth move as long as the frame rate's high enough. So let's update these guys to use the translates. See what this looks like. Might be too fast right now, but let's find out. Oh, really? The same issue. I'm not convinced it's actually using the new code. I'm going to leave that in there. I'm going to name both of these old. We might need to reload some stuff because I don't think it's using that new code yet. All right, I think it's using the new code now. Slow them down. Looks a little bit better. And he looks, I would say, smooth enough. And we probably need him not to react to the baby. Now, what's actually interesting with that is we have the rigid body on that guy set to freeze on Y. So he's actually bouncing off of the, I wonder if we set, no, we already saw that the trigger. All right, I want to do one other thing here. So I'm going to actually turn the trigger back on for the enemy. Because what I really want him to do is not actually have a physics-based correlation or physics-based response to the baby. Because that's what's popping him up in the air like that. So let's move our logic here into the trigger. I think what we saw before is it worked, it just didn't help. But now we're doing this a different way. So we're going to call this on trigger enter 2D. We'll throw our logic in here. And we'll say if the collision tag is bumper, do that stuff. Otherwise, we're not going to do anything. So this should not react to the player at all. And let's make sure we have this set as trigger on the enemy. All right, so he's not reacting to the baby at all because we don't have the baby set up as something that's noticing. So a collision is happening and that trigger is getting called, but the baby is, I guess, not considered to be a part of the issue. So we'll call this at this point pretty decent. Looks like he's moving all right. So what I'm going to do now is, might we want to have situations like this pretty often in our game? Now, we don't want to necessarily have to write this each and every little time. So what I'm going to do is we're actually going to move these markers close to the player. Okay, and then I'm going to actually make them children of the player. So they're kind of they come in as a package. Okay, so I've just made them children of the player. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down here to assets. I'm sorry, the enemy. So the enemy has the markers associated with him as children of him. And really, this is more of an organizational thing, because what I want to do is I want to create something called a prefab. Okay, and what a prefab is something that we can use over and over and over again. We already have logic. We already have an enemy that has a script associated with it. We have our begin and end markers set up accurately. So those guys are bounceable, and we can move them wherever we want. So I'm going to create a folder down here. It doesn't have to be in a folder, but we're going to create a folder for it. And we're going to call this folder prefabs. All right, and this is kind of a verbiage for Unity, is prefab. And now I'm just going to drag our enemy into that prefab folder. Okay. So now let's go ahead. I'm going to move this little enemy pod down here. And I'm going to go inside and I'll move his, well, we'll leave his end marker where it's at. I'll move his start marker a little bit farther down. Actually, we'll move the end marker a little bit farther left. Okay, so there's that one. And then I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drag another one of these enemies out here. So here's that guy. And I'll move his end marker down a little bit. And I'll move his start marker down a little bit. And then let's go ahead and let's get him a little closer to the ground here. Oh, he's moving with his... Oh, he's moving with his elements because... All right, we need to do this a little bit different. Let's reboot this a little bit. So I'm going to create a empty game object. We're going to call this a what would we call it? Enemy travel. Let's call it enemy travel. Good enough. So then we'll throw our enemy into there, and then the begin and end markers into there, and it's going to say you're going to break the prefab, and that's okay because we're actually redoing the prefab here. So I'm going to go ahead and actually, well, let's make sure this guy works again. Okay, now he's working again. So I just created an empty game object to house these things, instead of having the end marker and start marker as children of the enemy, because now when we move the enemy, those guys move with it because they were children. All right. So now I'll go ahead and I'll drop enemy travel down here, and I'll go ahead and delete the enemy one. All right, so now we'll drop a second enemy travel into our game. And I can go ahead and move my start and end markers around some for that guy if I want him to travel a little bit different distance. And go ahead and hit play on this. And we see that we have independent enemies moving. So this would be convenient for dropping enemies kind of throughout our level, instead of having to do all this programming kind of ourselves, right? All right, now to kind of complete this little section, we probably want those little signs to disappear. Maybe you don't want to see those. Just kind of have the enemy magically path back and forth, because it's going to be kind of weird with the signs and that kind of stuff. Unless we kind of went the Mario way and we thought about what are the different things that stop our enemies. So in Mario, we kind of had pipes, right? And then I think in Mario, there's also some blocks that can stop the enemy. So it's possible we can have prefabs for those as well. I guess if we really wanted to. The downside here with these guys is they also block the baby. So I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to make them just disappear. So in this script for enemy, the very first thing I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and get the renderers for the start and end. So this dot start marker dot get component. And this is probably going to, because this is called a sprite renderer, I think. Yeah, it's a sprite renderer. We'll grab the sprite renderer. Dot enabled is equal to false. And then we'll do that exact same thing for the end marker. So now they should disappear, but visually, but I believe that their box collider should still work. At least we hope that's the case. Okay, so now our baby is running into an invisible wall here. But at least the enemies are pathing back and forth in some sort of interesting way. So a couple of options. We could bring them back so our baby has to jump over them, or we can make it so that our baby does not interact with them. We already have those guys set up as, so that's the box collider for those. I want to try, what if I make those triggers? I think making them triggers will be okay. All right, so notice what I did here is I changed it on this particular version of the prefab. And then up here next to prefab, I hit apply, and that will change all versions of the prefab. So you don't have to re-drag them out over and over and over again. So let's see if it'll still bounce back and forth. No, well, actually, he's actually hitting the second box. He's hitting the other one. So this actually did not. That guy's a trigger. That guy's a trigger. Oh, hold on. My guys currently are kind of crisscrossing each other. So I actually think we might be okay. So I need to move that this way a little bit. So we can just move this one back this way. I'm not sure why they got so out of skew there. Let's see what that looks like. Okay, so now we made them triggers. I guess it might look a little bit funny how my guys are pathing back and forth instead of having actual things that they're bumping into. But we can now, because in our design we can see those things, we can now put visual things that don't have colliders on them there, and it'll be as if they're bumping into them or something like that, just position stuff. So I guess a couple different ways we could have done this, but since we're trying to make this as generic as possible, we now have enemies that can bounce back and forth between two invisible points, and we can drop them wherever we want in the scene. All right, so now we need to make our enemy capable of dealing with interactions with players. So similarly to what we had before in our scripts, let's see, we have our baby who I think, that's enemy. So the baby says, so notice that we currently have the logic for the baby inside of on collision enter 2D. So what we could do is we can move this logic for the enemy and is alive into the trigger on trigger enter. But then we would have to have the baby set up with a trigger, which would then make the baby fall through the ground. So on collision enter 2D does not get called when we bump into the enemy because the enemy's collider is a trigger. But the enemy's collider, we can ask the enemy if he hit the player, and then he can kill the player. I think that's the way we would make it work in this case. But that would actually make it work differently than here. So these spiky things we have here, they're tagged as enemies, and they have box colliders on them that we are interacting with in terms of physics. That's why he's bouncing up into the air. if we set those to be triggers and have them actually kill the player. So the enemy then kills the player. So let's, we would then have to give him the enemy script though. So let's do this. I'm going to write another script here. Let's call this enemy kill script. So we will throw this script on any enemy that we want to be able to kill the player. All right, so this guy is going to be the guy who knows how to kill players. And then inside here, we'll have the on come on. It's not grabbing my function completion again. Said close Visual Studio, we'll relaunch it. On trigger enter 2D. So now we want to know if it's the player that we bumped into, because this is going to be from the enemy's perspective. So let's make sure we have our player tagged as player, and we currently don't. So here's our player, and we already have a tag named player with a capital P that comes with Unity. So we'll just go ahead and use that one. Just remember that it is a capital P. So that'll mark our player. And then in the script here, we'll ask the question, if collision.tag is equal to player, because that's from this script's perspective, that's all he cares about. If I bumped into a player, then what do I want to do? I want to kill that player. Now we already have logic inside of our baby movement for what killing looks like. That's this whole ragdoll dealy flippy stuff. All that logic right there deals with killing. So I'm going to steal that logic. We're going to go into our player. It's going to have a function here called kill. And we're only going to be able to kill the player if he's currently alive, right? So if this dot is alive, then get the ragdoll, move it to the right position, flip is alive to false, turn off the sprite render, all that jazz. Okay, so baby now knows how to die. Okay, then we'll take that logic out of the on collision enter 2D. All right, because what we're going to end up, what we're going to have to happen now is instead of the baby noticing that he bumped into an enemy, since we now kind of have two different kinds of enemies, and one of them we had working as a physical rigid body, the other one we had working as a trigger. Now we want all enemies to work as triggers, and we'll programmatically handle this. We want the enemy, when he collides with the player, to get the player to call the baby movement script. How do we do that? If I'm the enemy and I just collided with the player and I get my trigger callback, all right, you're the player, okay, and now I want to kill you. All right, does that seem threatening? No, not really. It's the big teddy bear. All right, so I'm the enemy, and I've decided you collide with me, so now you should die. You have a function called kill. I'm the one who knows you bumped into me. How do I get you to call your kill function? I think we've already covered this. What do you think?
So just another collision?
Well, the collision already happened. Okay, so you know how to die. You have a kill function. I know that you bumped into me, so I know that you should die. So now I need to let you know that you should die, and then you need to carry out your orders, your function. So effectively, how do I make you call your function? That's the question here. Okay, did we talk about how to do that?
Wouldn't we just calling baby with die?
That's only if we make it a static function. Yeah, because we've done that, right? Did we do static functions already? I'm getting confused between two classes. Because then we can, if we had it as a static function, we could do that. But then he would have to know about that particular instance of the baby. Have we done send message? We talked about that in here. All right, so that's what we're going to do. So I'm in the enemy. This is from the enemy perspective because we're going to attach this enemy kill script to the enemy. Where any enemy that has the enemy kill script knows how to kill players. That's the point of this script. All right. So inside here, I'm going to say send message. Well, I want to send the message to the person I collided with. So I'm going to say collision dot game object dot send message. Now the message is going to have the method name that I want to call, and I think we called it kill with a lowercase k. That's the method name, kill. So I will send the kill message to the player. Because in this particular case, if the collisions tag is player, then you are, and actually I want to, this will work, but to be more explicit, I'm going to say collision.gameObject .player, because I actually want the game object associated with this collider, even though they will have the same tag. Right, so I'm going to say if the dude I collided with, if the game object associated with the thing I collided with has a tag named player, then I'm going to go ahead and send that game object the kill message. So you'll receive that kill message and call your function with the same name, which will cause you to die only if you're alive, and then have yourself respawn in 3 seconds. Make sense? So now we're putting it onto the enemies to actually inform the player that they should die. Same stuff is happening, the means to an end is a little bit different. So now we have 2 different enemies that we want to let know that they can kill the player. And let's just do it with just our walking enemy first. So here's that enemy, because we're going to have to update the prefab with this. So I'll just pick one of my 2 enemies. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to drag in. Well, I can actually, if I do add component here, and I type in enemy, it'll bring up that enemy kill script. It might be a little bit easier to do than drag into a thing that has a whole bunch of guys. And then I'm going to go ahead up here by prefab, I'm going to click apply. And then if I come down to this other enemy travel, you see that enemy already has that enemy kill script associated with it. I didn't have to go and do this for 20 different enemy travel prefabs across my level. All right, so those 2 enemy travel guys know how to kill a player. So player will bump into them. These guys have a box collider that is set up as a trigger. So even though the baby isn't a trigger, the baby will bump into their box collider, triggering their trigger. Upon triggering their trigger, they will say, is this guy this is an enemy kill, Is the thing I just bumped into a player? If it is, tell that player to kill themselves. All right, so this guy just killed the baby over and over and over again. It's just a very dangerous respawn point based on where we have this guy padding. All right, but let's see if I can break out of the mold. Whew. Oh, come on. There we go. All right, so we did not add the kill script to these guys. The dead baby body just finally dropped. We maybe have gone a little aggressive with that bounce. But so these enemies, they don't have that kill script. So even though the baby's colliding with them, they don't know any better. Because these aren't part of that other prefab. These are just, I don't know, block enemies or something like that. So what we'll do is we'll go ahead and select all of those guys. I'll add a component to it, the enemy kill script. So now they should know how to kill the baby. It's just an unfortunate placement of the. Oh, come on. You can do it. Very bad. Oh. Oh, you know how to. Okay, well, I think he has died. That's strange. Actually, what I'm going to do here is we're going to just get rid of that enemy. He's becoming problematic. Did we make those guys triggers? Oh, they're not. So their trigger was never getting called. Because remember, our enemy kill script works in terms of a trigger to kill them off. Okay, so questions about any of that? All right, so now let's go ahead and let's add some sound. So I'm going to go into the asset store, and you'll have access to this through the folder I gave you, because just a couple days ago I bought some sounds. I don't know how great these sounds are going to be, so we're just going to pick a sound that looks like it's close to what we want. Let's see. Is this going to give me my list of purchases? Oh, maybe under licenses. No. How do I see my purchases? I know there's a way to, because I've done it before. Okay. I guess that's one way to do it. All right, so we have this RPG skill sounds stuff. So we have sounds like arrows and kick damage, firebolt damage stuff. So we'll take damage of some type when the enemy hits us. So I'll go ahead and download this guy. All right, so he'll be inside of our assets. Is it? Oh, I have to import it. So now when you click on the link inside of our the Dropbox link from Slack, you'll have a new folder here that has all these sounds in it. Do I have audio turned up on this guy? All right. I'm not hearing anything on there. Oh, that's like all the sounds. We're still going. All right, so this guy is Steel Arrow. Kick damage. What does cute activate? It's like a tickle sound or something? I guess I could do it. Elemental explosion. All right, we're gonna go with Elemental Explosion 1. This guy. All right, so we're gonna go into our enemy. And the enemy, since he's the one who knows he's going to kill the player, we're going to go ahead and have him play this sound like he hit the player or something, some sound thing. And so I'm going to collapse some of these guys so we have some space in here. And let's see if it gives us the audio module in there when I drag it. It was this one, right? Except I need to click my enemy again. Okay, so this gives us a audio source. And right now it's set to play on awake. So when this first launches, did it not play yet? Let me look at a different component because this guy's having you choose the output. Audio. No, audio source is what I want. I don't want it to play yet anyways. I just assumed that having it play on awake would have made it play. All right, well, in any case, I'm going to go ahead and grab the audio source with this guy. There's two different ways to play audio. We can have an audio source associated with something and tell it to play, or we can create our own audio source, which might be what we need to do, and then tell it the name of the sound to play. So we might actually end up doing that and creating an audio clip inside of our code. Let's try this one first. So I'll go back into the script and we'll let our enemy kill. And if we're going to kill the player, what we're going to do is we're going to say this dot get component audio source. dot play. So we'll tell that guy to go ahead and play himself when the player, immediately before the player dies. So it's kind of a punch and then a whatever. Oh, hold on. He's not even killing the baby anymore. Oh, because the audio source didn't get added to this player. Well, except none of that's going to work because I did it all while the game was still running. Audio source. All right, baby died that time, but it's not playing the clip. All right, so let me run to the documentation real quick. We can play one. So we're going to give ourselves the audio clip associated with this guy. That's off. So for enemy kill, we'll go ahead and grab, we'll call it impact. That's good enough. Come back into Unity. Go to our enemy. I'm going to remove this audio source here. And then enemy kill is expecting this impact sound. So I'll go ahead and grab one of our sounds, drag it in there. So this is just the clip itself, not the thing that will play it. All right, now we're going to create a variable of type audio source. And that could be a private variable if we want. And then in start, we'll go ahead and set that variable equal to the audio source associated with this component. Now I'm thinking we don't actually have to add an audio source to the component. I think this gets the default audio source. And then we'll go ahead and play it there. So we'll tell our default audio source to play one shot, so that'll just play a one time. The impact sound at this volume level, which we can adjust. All right, let's see if that makes some noise. No, he's not even dying anymore. That audio thing was blocking it. Like it was stuck trying to play it. So probably an error. Is it going to tell me there is no audio source associated with this guy?
It did.
Okay. So that means we do need to add an audio source. This is the part that's concerning me, this audio mixer group thing. Oh, well, I don't have need to uncomment it. Yeah.
You have to put the audio clip in the audio source.
No, I did that initially. This should just be programmatically doing the same thing. The thing that it's missing here is this output. What's our mixer group? And there's nothing to choose from in there. All right, we'll have to figure that one out. So in any case, we'll get sound playing next time. So for your homework assignments, since now you've seen what these prefab things can do, what we want to do is we want to have a way for you to jump up and maybe hit something. We're going to try to simulate that mushroom thing kind of coming out, right? So I want you to be able to jump up, have something that's like a placeholder for a mushroom, rise up, and then go to one of the sides. It should be an actual rigid body, dealy flippy thingy. Does that make sense? Now he can be there the whole time, so you can have his renderer turned off. Okay, but when you hit it, it should rise up and then pick a direction you want it to go. And then it should start running the thing. You don't have to be able to collect it or anything. Just have Mario's mushroom upon jumping and hitting something appear. Or choose your poison, whether you want to be a mushroom or whatever else. Make sense? All right. I will see everybody on Tuesday.